All right, this is Ubaid on behalf of V Electronics, and in this video, we'll be talking about the circular flow diagram. Okay, this has to do with economics. This has to do with your household and firms. Now, before we talk about households and firms, okay, let's understand what a circular flow diagram really is. Okay, so in the past, we talked about theories, we talked about models. Okay, we know that once a hypothesis, okay, just like the hypotheses in any experiment, whether that experiment is in your physics class or your chemistry class. Okay, in this case, this would be an experiment in terms of economics. Okay, once the hypothesis is proven and once you come to a conclusion, you have what we call a theory. Okay, now a theory basically explains the relationship between two or more variables in terms of economics. Okay, so this is relationship between two or more variables. Okay, now because theory is basically something that has been proven, we know that this theory is also universally accepted. Okay, so universal. All right, and because this is a universally accepted theory, we know that once people start standardizing, okay, their business models based on this theory, and people start accepting this theory as a fact, it becomes sort of like a law. Okay, just like your legal system. Okay, and when people start using this law and theory to build or construct a model, okay, this is the model that may be used to explain how households and firms interact. Okay, so when it comes to model is mostly theoretical. Okay, it's a set of assumptions, theoretical, set of assumptions based on theory and law. However, in a model such as ceteris paribus, we're assuming that everything else stays the same. For example, to understand the relationship between two variables. Okay, and the relationship that I'll be talking about in this video is the relationship between households and firms. Okay, and we're assuming that everything else, such as demand for other things, competition, we're talking about inventions, innovations, all that stays the same. Okay, and we'll try to understand how households and firms interact. So when it comes to households, we're essentially talking about your house. Okay, we can be talking about my house. We can be talking about somebody else's house. Okay, but households in general has to do with consumers. Okay, so technically, this has to do with consumers. Now, when it comes to the consumer population, what's essentially happening over here is the consumer is requesting services from firms. It's either that or the firms are offering goods and services as a result of which the consumers are buying these goods and services in a market economy. Okay, so the firms will be supplying goods and services, goods plus services. And in exchange, the households and the consumers, they make payments for these goods and services. All right, now apart from that, okay, the households also supply something else to firms, and that is labor. Okay, so the households They supply labor to firms, whether it's a factory, a warehouse, a retail store, okay, a distribution center, okay, a construction site, so on and so forth. Okay, so they supply labor. And in exchange, the firms, they offer wages, salaries, and benefits. So wages plus salaries plus benefits. Okay, you have your group benefits, your insurance benefits, your healthcare benefits, okay, so on and so forth. Okay, now, because these firms offer wages, salaries, and benefits, this circular diagram over here has to do with employees. Okay, has to do with employment. Okay, now we can add to this circular diagram, especially if this firm is owned and managed by a business owner. Okay, now when it's managed by a business owner, the business owner will also supply things like capital and entrepreneurship. So you have entrepreneurship plus capital. All right, so the households will supply entrepreneurship and capital to the firms. All right, so this would be an example of how a business works. Okay, where business owners do much more than what an employee does. Okay, when it comes to the interaction between firms and households. Okay, so this is basically your circular flow diagram broken down for you. On behalf of V Electronics, this is Obey. Have yourself a great day.